Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the Fiio SR11. This is a 110 US dollar audio streamer. This was sent to me directly from Fiio for review. They have asked nothing in return other than a fair and honest evaluation. If any retailers I am an affiliate partner with carries this, then I will put them down in the description below with affiliate links, label them as such. I only use affiliate link money to help keep the channel running. This unit was of particular intrigue to me, and that's why I asked Fiio to send one over, in that, in my opinion, audio streamers have been somewhat stubbornly expensive. Units that are all put together, that you don't have to assemble or program yourself, have been usually in the multiple hundreds of dollars. I think the iFi Zen Stream at about 400 USD was about the cheapest there was for a while. There are a couple of retailers as of the filming of this that are actually selling it for $99.99. This then really cuts the price down on some streaming options out there, particularly for a fully assembled, put together streamer unit that you don't have to program yourself. So, is this the breakthrough streamer the market has needed? Stick around after shameless self-promotion to find out.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
My takeaways on this little $110 unit is that it is almost that breakthrough. It is almost there. It sounds very, very good in that it really does not have much of a sound at all on its own. From the USB output anyway, and I think you do want to use the USB output on there, and we'll unpack that as the review unfolds. And then also, the reason that it's almost the true breakthrough, and maybe not quite there yet, is that it is a little bit limited in terms of its software. The streaming protocols that it uses are a bit on the limited end, and so I don't know how big its appeal is going to be and how many budget audio users will be attracted to this piece just because of the somewhat lack of protocols that it has, at least right now. Fiio, as I understand and reading from their website, I think it's a fair interpretation that they are working on expanding the streaming protocols that it can work with future firmware updates, so stay tuned for that. But for the time being, this is an excellent option if you use Roon or you like to use AirPlay for background listening. Roon for serious listening, AirPlay for background listening. And if you're already a Roon user and you're looking for a streamer and you hear about all of the very real software problems that are out there with the Zen Stream, for example, because that is essentially a brick anymore. I have one on the shelf somewhere over there because the software issues are so bad on it, I haven't been using it for a while. But anyway, if you're looking at the Zen Stream and you're a Roon user, then this right here with a linear power supply might be the thing that you are looking for. All right, let's get into all of that. Timestamps are on the video to jump around as needed. Okay, let's go through the features list here real quick. Again, $110 for this. The streaming protocols that it supports are Roon. As I just said, I am a Roon user, so that worked out nice. And then also Apple's AirPlay 2. Through AirPlay 2, you can access Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, basically any media that can be streamed through AirPlay 2 for audio you can get on here, again, with the audio. It's not going to support any video through that codec. Okay, but those options there are a little bit limited. What is lacking here is DLNA, UPnP, which are kind of the same thing, I understand, okay, or any direct connection to streamer apps like Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, etc. Okay, so that's what I mean at the top of the video where I say like the real limiting factor here and the one thing holding it back from being a true breakthrough for streamers in the audio market right here is that the software protocols are a bit limited. I think the protocols it uses just a little bit of an awkward match at the price point. I don't think there are going to be all that many users out there that are in the market for a $110 streamer that are already Roon users. Roon typically ends up being for people like me, right? The Roon platform is not super cheap on its own. You need to buy into some of its hardware. There's like a multiple $100 yearly fee or like an $800 some fee, $800 some fee for a lifetime membership to Roon or all that. So it's not cheap to get into the Roon platform. And so if you are serious enough as an audiophile and a consumer of digital music in particular that you have bought into the Roon ecosystem, I don't know that this is going to be the device for your main system. Okay, you're probably already using a streamer or other Roon endpoint already anyway, and I don't know that this is the best thing for you. However, it could be a great thing to anchor a secondary Roon system. So if you have a second setup somewhere and you are looking for a cheap streaming option to throw in there, this could work. And then because it has AirPlay, the rest of your family could get into it too when you're not around and using it on that second system, okay, by chance. However, that I'm going to say is the one thing I think that's holding me back from saying this is just an absolute breakthrough on the market. Go get one right now, and that is going to sell like hotcakes because you get the performance of it. Okay, sounds really good. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's just that I don't know how many entry-level users are going to buy this just for AirPlay. Just because AirPlay will top out at 24-bit 48 kilohertz audio, so it will do lossless up to that. But if you want to do high-res stuff or DSD or anything like that, AirPlay is not going to cut it. You can only get to the high-res and the DSD, which it'll go up to 768 kilohertz 24-bit files, and it'll do DSD, but through Roon, right? Not through AirPlay. Okay, so that's it. Just oddly enough, it's the software that's lacking on this one, I think, for the true entry-level user, not the hardware. All right. With that said, it does say on Fiio's website for this product that you can get a test firmware right now if you want to try DLNA or UPnP, but that is not part of their official firmware right now. I did not end up doing that, but it also tells me that they are working behind the scenes to do firmware updates to expand the protocols that this can work with. I just don't know how long it's going to take for that to happen. If they do get to stable, solid support for DLNA, Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, those other direct connects to the streaming services, then this thing will become the breakthrough that I think we are all hoping that it will be. But I will also add another use case where I think this will be really valuable is if you put a linear power supply on it and you're a Roon user. I mentioned the iFi Zen Stream already. The Zen Stream, the Neo Stream too, unfortunately, I've got both of them here and they're both making sure my shelf doesn't float away over there. And that's because the software on them has gotten so messed up that they are essentially bricks to me anymore, and I just cannot trust them or use them consistently. But if you put a linear power supply on this, and I have one here to show, and I'll talk more about the performance here. This is a small green computer, 5-volt linear power supply, about $185, I think, for that. So the two of those together are still a little bit under $300, which is less than the cost of the Zen Stream. And this performs really well with that linear power supply. And so if you're kind of a mid-level Roon user, you've got a mid-fi system, a Sonor Ultra Rendu or something like that is a little too much for you. This and the linear power supply through Roon, excellent, okay? Really excellent. So that, I think, redeems this unit a little bit in terms of the value and like its ability to claim market share, is that use case there with a linear power supply genuinely upping its performance level and getting it into somewhere where a higher number of more serious listeners will be interested in it. All right. So there's a lot to unpack on that there. We will unpack that through the video. Let me go ahead and cut to an overhead clip where I show you the build of this, the user interface, the I/O, and all of that. Then we'll come back on the other side and we'll talk about test gear and sound. Here we go. All right, quick overhead view here to show you the top of the unit here, because again we have, just like the K11R2R, we have this big bright Fiio indicator light on the top here that is super bright. Okay, like when you're in a dark room, that can be retina piercing. It is dimmable though, and it changes color with sampling rate or file type. So different color for DSD, different color for like 44.1, 96 kilohertz, you know, so on and so forth. Okay, dimmable, or you can turn it off in the menu. All right, go ahead and take a look at the unit. It is built on the same chassis and it looks exactly the same as the K11 and the K11R2R on the outside. And other than having a power button here for on-off on the front, it otherwise works exactly the same, where you get a volume control here, but then you also have a quick switch here between the modes. You just push the button and you get into this and you can switch between the modes, and you saw that there was Rune and there was AirPlay, and then the mix meant that it could do either Rune or AirPlay, which could be handy if the whole family has access to this device and so forth. It'd leave it on mix mode. There might be just a slight performance boost, particularly in Rune, if you go to the dedicated Rune mode over the mix mode. Okay. But other than that, fairly well-built unit. The navigation of the menu and all of that is just like the K11R2R that I reviewed recently. Link in the description. Push and hold that, and then rotate through the different options here for the setup and so forth. Okay? And then got to return to get back out of that. Now, the user interface on the K11R2R that I reviewed got some critique in the comments of that video, and deservedly so. But this unit comes with a remote control, which is very handy. And also, I really appreciate this. For someone who has gear in and out constantly, it literally says remote for SR11 on the remote. So thank you, Fiio, for that. That saved me a couple times, because I picked it up and go, wait, what's this to again? Oh, okay, that's nice. All right. Basic functionality on here. You can quickly switch between the USB and coax output. I'll show you more on that in a moment. Menu navigation and selection here. Variable output select here, although I don't know why you would really change the volume on this device. I would leave it full volume all the time and then just use your headphone amp or your preamp or whatever this is plugged into to do the volume control, if that is an option for you. But this makes it a little bit easier to navigate that menu. All right, so it's a handy thing to have around there. And so, I mean, I ended up not using it a ton though, because frankly, once this gets set up, I basically just didn't touch it. I just let it do its thing. And, you know, I'd use my iPad, okay, or my computer or whatever using Rune to control this thing, right? That's what I would end up doing. Okay, so with that, let me power it off, unplug it, show you the rest of the unit here. Okay, so again, built exactly the same as the K11 and K11R2R. Black and silver, I believe, are the only color options for the casing here. All right, back panel. You have your choice between Ethernet and Wi-Fi connection. So Wi-Fi antenna here. You have SPDIF output in two flavors, RCA coaxial and Toslink optical, okay, with a nice little protective, okay, thingamajig on it there. All right. Then you get two flavors of USB audio output, right? You can use either of these right here as the USB audio output. You cannot use both at the same time. You've got to pick which one you want to use, okay? But you have a full-size USB-A and then also a USB-C output here to use as your option. And then you have the power input here, which is just a 5-volt power. So like you can power this right off of like the charging brick for a smartphone or a tablet device or something of that will work just fine. And in fact, they include such a little power brick in the packaging for this. Okay, you can, however, boost the performance using a linear power supply. And I'll talk more about that here later in the video because that might actually be where the real value of this unit comes in. Again, more on that in a little bit. All right. Real quick, also of note here, just as a teaser for later, you're going to want to use the USB audio outputs. I found that the SPDIF outputs were a bit harsh and they just didn't sound as good. And I'll talk more about that when we get to the sound section. But there is the build and the interface and the use of the unit. So I think we can get back to me on camera talking about test gear and sound and comparisons and all of that good stuff. Let's get to it. Test gear for this. I mostly used it as a Roon endpoint over Wi-Fi. I really didn't worry with the LAN connection because I think a lot of people are going to be attracted to the wireless connection. And I found the Wi-Fi connection to be very stable, not a single hookup. Every time I powered this off, unplugged it, moved it somewhere else, plugged it back in, the Wi-Fi came back right away, okay, reliably, stably, no service interruptions or anything like that. Okay, that worked great. All right. Okay, so again, Roon endpoint most of the time. I also did try using it as an AirPlay 2 endpoint using my iPad there to cast to it. I didn't use that as much, but that also was nice and stable, worked really well, nice and easy, sounded good too. Okay, downstream from this, the DACs that I plugged this into, it spent most of the time on the Geshelli Labs J2S, both a 4493 and a 4499 variant. I just got the 4499 in for review, so that review will be coming up in the near future. Stay tuned. And then I was plugged into the Amonero USB inputs on those J2Ss. I did also try plugging this into the Aqua La Voce S3 that I just used as a high-end DAC for this to try just to see how much it would scale up and how good it would sound there. I also connected the SPDIF outputs to this into, I think it was the coax that I used, into the 4499 variant of one of those J2Ss. Okay. From there, I used a variety of headphone amps, and I'm mostly a headphone user, so headphone amps and headphones. So after those DACs, some of the headphone amps that I've used would be like the Aoun S17 Pro, the LTA Z10E. I don't need to go through the whole list. It was a few there. And then I also used some really high-end headphones to dig into how well this could do, including Hi-Fi Mensasvara, Focal Utopia, both the 2022 and the original models, Hi-Fi Min HE1000 SE, okay, and so forth. I'm not going to go through the whole list again, but I just throw those out there to let you know that I was not messing around. I used some really high-end stuff to test this and to see how well it sounded, you know, downstream from it, you know, we're using this as a source. Okay. The sound of this unit. And this is one of those products where I can genuinely say that the sound of this unit is pretty close to not having much of a sound, honestly. I really got the sense that particularly from the USB output, it just got out of the way. The sonic background was clean and was very low, like just black void kind of sonic background. Did not hear a noise floor that I could attribute to this at all. The sound was also very clean, very clear. All of the subtle details, I mean, were there pretty well. Like, I mean, you can get better, you can get cleaner, quieter, more resolving, but you gotta spend, you know, pay for it, right? But like, you know, was no audible change in perceived frequency response or tonality that I could attribute to this device that wasn't coming from the DAC or the amp or the headphone or anything like that. Like this device is, I mean, this thing is about as neutral and as clear and as get out of the way, at least from its USB output, as one can expect from about $100 unit. Okay. There are areas where like my Sonor Ultra Rendu in particular would outperform it, like the Ultra Rendu, which is, you know, $1,000 on its own, and you have to buy an LPS to match with it because it doesn't come with its own power supply. So that's, you know, usually a couple hundred more at least on top of that. You know, the Ultra Rendu is going to be cleaner, smoother, more refined, more resolving, more detailed, more holographic and all of that than this. And noticeably so, but what this can do in all of those technical categories that I just named is actually quite impressive. Okay, where it really stands out in its performance is that using this as a streamer, though, is better in performance than directly connecting your DAC to the USB output of a computer or a tablet or, you know, anything like that. Okay, it does improve the audio over a direct USB connection to a computer. To test that, I got out my Asus ZenBook laptop, which is a Windows 11 device. Got those Gishelli DACs out. I think it was the 4499 version that I used for this test. And I picked that one because I know those Gishelli DACs, the Amonero USB module, is a bit sensitive to noise and all that. So I wanted to see if this would legitimately clean up a USB signal. And it does. The direct connection from the laptop to the Gishelli sounded great, particularly with the Amonero ASIO driver. Sounded great. Review again coming up soon. Okay, but then when I used this as the Roon endpoint and then USB from here into that same Gishelli unit using AudioQuest Forest USB-C to USB or AudioQuest Forest USB cables in either case. Okay. This just sounded cleaner. The sonic background was quieter. There was a little bit more resolution and detail retrieval. There's a little bit more spatial holography in the sound than that direct USB connection. So even at $110, this was a step up in audio performance from a direct USB connection to a laptop computer, which is what it needs to be able to do, I think, to convince, you know, entry-level streaming users that streaming really is the way to go. I think it's the way to go. It is the better listening experience, and this lives up to that. So that was excellent to see too. All right. The SPDIF outputs on this, though, the coax and the Toslink here, I did not think were all that great. So for whatever reason, the SPDIF output got harsh and fatiguing, and it kind of flattened in the soundstage. The soundstage did not have the depth to it that it did from the USB output, and it just did not sound as put together or as refined or as clear in the sound from the SPDIF outputs as it did from the USB. So I highly recommend using the USB output on this over the SPDIF on this unit here. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about the use with a linear power supply. This is a little bit older unit from Small Green Computer. I will put a link to where you can buy the updated version of this in the description down below. That's about a $185 unit, I think. Okay, right around in there. And that's a fair chunk of money to be adding to the $110 for this unit here. Why would you want to do that? Well, because the performance dramatically improves. Okay? That already quiet noise floor that I mentioned drops even more. Like just it's hard to explain why, but this just becomes even cleaner, quieter, smoother, more refined, more detailed, more holographic, less fatiguing, and punchier. The dynamics also really wake up, and the physical impact of the sound wake up when you use one of those linear power supplies. It is a wholesale, across the board sonic improvement, and noticeably so. And this brings me back to what I talked about earlier in the review, where let's say you're already a Roon user and you're looking for a decent streamer and the Sonor Ultra Rendu plus linear power supply is too much for you, and you've heard all of the horror stories, which I have also experienced, about the software issues on the iFi streamers, and you're not tech savvy enough to build one of those, Raspberry Pi streamers, if you could even get a hold of one of those anymore, and so on and so forth. Okay, now this is sitting out there at $110. Even getting one of these linear power supplies still under $300. You still have $100 in price to go before you get to the cost of an iFi Zen stream. Okay, this becomes a really, really good option there. I would look into this. Works great with Roon, no connection issues, no performance issues and all that. Sounds great, particularly with the linear power supply. That's a real value for that kind of user right there, I think. So, I mean, let's come back around and wrap all of this up before I start getting too repetitive. Okay. The SR11, as currently configured, is not the true entry-level streamer breakthrough I was personally hoping for, not because of hardware or performance issues, but just because it doesn't support enough streaming protocols for what I think most entry-level users would be looking for. It does work with AirPlay. That's already a little bit limiting. There does seem like there might be future firmware updates that allow DLNA, UPnP, Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, etc. Okay, but I don't know when or really for sure if those are going to happen. Okay, but if you can use this with Roon, particularly with a linear power supply, I think that's where the real value of this thing can come in. So we are maybe, Fiio I should say, is maybe about one generation removed from this being the true breakthrough product. Because if this had DLNA on it, if it had Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, okay, or an app that you could stream Qobuz through it losslessly and bit perfectly and all of that, then this would be, whatever sports metaphor you want to use, okay, slam dunk, home run, there are several of them out there, okay, anyway, then it would really be the breakthrough, okay, but for now we're just going to have to take that half step there. It sounds great, okay. Mid-level Roon users could be very interested in this, just not quite there on the full software support yet. Okay, but I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the Fiio SR11 streamer. Again, it is almost there. Just a couple more software protocols, and we are ready to rock and roll fully on this thing. Okay, but it probably is already going to drive streamer prices down, which I think is needed because streamer prices have been stubbornly high. All right. Thanks again for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, do those things you do to support YouTube channels. Check out my PayPal, my Patreon, and as always, enjoy the music.